Rashmi, you work at a major beverage company, you work at Coca-Cola, and you've been staying in Bangkok for about 4 years now. But from a creator's perspective, how should you pitch?
I get like hundreds of messages, people trying to sell me their services. The worst is people just come with a little bit of an entitlement saying, okay, so when is a good time to have a chat with you and explain our offering? I'm like, I don't have a need.
Yeah.
I don't want to know your offering. Why would I spend an hour with you to understand your offering? Articulate the benefit you're going to provide. It's not about what you want to tell them, it's about what they want to hear. Where they actually are worried about is quality and reliability. I think that's the concern. So if you pitch to them, talk to that concern. Maker schedule and manager schedule. Most people in the corporate team will be on a manager schedule, and this person who's the creative needs to be on a maker schedule to do good work. Clients need to understand is that creatives don't work on a manager schedule. And what creatives needs to understand is that they don't work on a maker schedule. A lot of time people know that they should, let's say, exercise, they should take break, those kind of things, but they don't do it. So I think for creatives, it's so much important to understand that well-being is not like a good to do for them. It really channelizes their inspiration and creativity to produce good work.
Well, hello and welcome to Thousand Faces Club. This is a new video series that we're starting, where we'll be speaking about creators and how can they future-proof themselves? How can they create brands? And how can they create partnerships out of brands? And obviously, how can they make sure that they're financially safe and that their well-being is taken care of? To cover about all these diverse topics, we have our very first guest, Rashmi from Coca-Cola, who works at a global level there in Bangkok. So we're going to be speaking to her. Rashmi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shreevar. Pleasure to be here.
Well, we're actually doing this show not in India, not in the US, but in Thailand, because Rashmi lives in Bangkok. So we decided that'll be a great conversation to have one-on-one. But Rashmi, you work at a major beverage company, you work at Coca-Cola, and you've been staying in Bangkok for about 4 years now. But rather than having like a LinkedIn approach of whatever you've done so far in terms of whatever your career has been, you also worked at Unilever in the past. But give me a sense of like some highlights that you've had throughout this journey in terms of the projects that you've done, or perhaps your journey itself, which has been very major milestones of your career. What have been the inflection points, if I had to ask you?
So I agree. The LinkedIn approach. Maybe not something which the audience will be too interested in. They can go to LinkedIn and check. I think maybe I'll talk about 2 inflection points just in career journey, right? Career is such a huge part of you as a person. I think one inflection point was moving from an India role to a global role.
Sure.
And I was in consulting. So I had spent 5 years in consulting. I had spent before that 4-5 years in line, as we say.
Sure.
In India, and after that I moved to a global role looking at APAC and Southeast Asia and now Gulf. The exposure one gets by understanding and expanding one's horizons, and then cross-pollinating those ideas into creating something innovative and new.
Sure.
That was an inflection point for me. I think I shifted my mindset.
Sure.
And the second I would highlight is when I discovered my purpose or the reason for doing what I do.
Yeah, it was that. I'm guessing that was a long process, though.
I think it's a journey, but during COVID, I started talking to a lot of people, and, we did a podcast for a company called I Feel Fine and Wellbeing. So I was already doing all of this as a part of my role. I started my career in training and development, and the love for helping people grow was there without labeling it as a purpose. But I think when you discover that in a very clear manner, then you just become more deliberate, you just become more intentional, you just become more purposeful. I think that was another inflection point which happened around 4-5 years back.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned your first inflection point was obviously moving abroad, after having such a interesting career back in India as well. And you've been here, in Thailand for about 4 years now. So tell me, how's it been for you, in terms of your day-to-day? Like, what does you in a global role, right? Like, it's not just, India or APAC, even the Gulf now, as you mentioned. So what does like a day in your life look like? Like is it a lot of meetings? Is it a lot of solo deep focus time? What's it like?
Interesting. So I've been in Southeast Asia for about 7 years now.
Okay.
So I was in Vietnam before that. And the roles have been similar. So I've always been into helping people grow, helping people learn, and the intersection of high performance leadership and well-being. My role currently is, I would maybe break it up into 3 parts. Okay. So the first 1/3 is skill development, right? Now, skill development is a little bit more complex because when you have 11, 12 markets, which are at a very different level of maturity, where India is and where Vietnam is and where Cambodia is and where Australia or Gulf is, so different. And adult learning is not the same everywhere. So the behavioral, the cultural, all of those things. So I think 1/3 would be just about those things, right?
Okay.
So helping people develop, grow. The second 1/3 is, and that's a lot of meetings, trainings, a lot of those things. The second half, I block some deep, second 1/3 of that slot, I would say, is like a deep focus time where it's a lot of understanding what's happening and being able to see ahead of the curve so that we can start building people, talent, infrastructure to be competitive leaders in the future. So, for example, gig economy is only here to grow. So as organizations, do we have the right, from the mindset perspective, sometimes corporates are reluctant to work with gig economy workers from a mindset, but also to the smallest thing. Do we have like a payment system which is easy and efficient for a freelance creator, who cannot wait probably 60 to 90 days for payment and things like that,
So that does hurt. I mean, that struck a chord right here when you said 90-day payment. I was like, 3 months for a payment, I think that would be a bit too much.
Yes. And like, I apologize on behalf of all corporates because I know how painful that process can be for someone like a small outfit. And the last 1/3, I would say, is just working with business leaders. So the head of businesses to solve business problems, and business problems are often people problems.
Of course,
So that's how I would spend a typical day.
Interesting. And when you mention, Rashmi, that you're training these leaders and you're developing them with skills, what do you like? I want you to like double down on that, or like double click on that, because that's very interesting to me as to you're also training people becoming leaders within the organization. Because they essentially you want to make a workforce that's resolute. That you want to make. And so how do you teach them leadership? Because it's again something which is so you go to a place and you sort of learn through synthesis and through being with people. But how do you, as somebody in the people function, how do you teach that?
Okay, so let me take it step by step. Okay, one is, how do you teach leadership? It's a very popular framework of 70-20-10. It worked in HR and corporates, and which is 70% of what you learn, not just leadership, is on the job. 20% of what you learn is through mentors, your network, peers. And 10% of what you learn is actually sitting in a classroom and that training and all of those things. So my job, or an organization's job, is to provide that 70-20-10. Now, you would think that it's easy, people do it by learning, but not necessarily. Because when you are in a day-to-day job, your focus is not necessarily on learning or growing more. You're focused on getting the job done, and you only learn as much as you need to get the job done. Now in corporates, you have more knowledge workers, Shreevar. So knowledge workers, you need to do a lot of things just as a self person. Like, we are doing this podcast, somebody is listening to it and learning, right? Not every person has that enthusiasm to kind of self-learn. So what we do is basically create an environment, a platform, give them tools, tell them why it's important to be a better leader, for example, give them a little bit more self-awareness, encourage them to take feedback, And it doesn't happen automatically. Like you
I'm
need a
sure.
system, processes to help that happen.
I'm sure.
So that 70-20-10, to bring it alive, you need like people to facilitate it. So that's how you teach it. So for example,
Interesting.
20 is mentoring. You run a mentoring program where you match people with the right mentor in the organization, which they won't do otherwise. Right? They won't get to know. And of course, 10% is simple, run those skill development workshops.
Makes sense. So I've gotten a great sense of like, what you're doing at your current gig. But I also want to know on the other side, right? Like you tell me about Leaders Who Thrive, tell me about some of the other projects that you've done. You've been, of course, been a TEDx speaker, which is why I think you're such a great speaker, and I'm sure the listeners and the viewers would already agree that you have such a great grasp on speaking. But tell me about that. Like how have these things shaped you, and have they been a very important part of your life for how long now? Because you've also done jazz dancing, I've heard, which is just crazy to me. That also exists and people do it like professionally, I guess, on the side. But tell me more about that. Tell me that side of you as well.
So I've always had some creative projects on the side, and I think it's such an overlooked aspect of being a leader. Or because you cross-pollinate ideas, right? So I bring a lot of insight to my work because I run a community for leaders, because I write, because I speak. And my whole TED talk was about lessons learned on the dance floor, which made me a better leader.
Correct.
And I didn't know it'll resonate with so many people, but I still get messages on that. So I think that creative expression is very important for leaders. So yes, Leaders Who Thrive is a community which came into being during COVID when I started talking to a lot of people like CEOs, top leaders, founders about how do they take care of well-being and where is the high performance and well-being intersection. Because sometimes people think that if you want to really, really be productive and work, be successful, you need to not take care of yourself, or you also need to kind of compromise on that. And then we delve into those things in that podcast. So that's how Leaders Who Thrive community came about.
Interesting. And, I can draw a pretty interesting parallel between Leaders Who Thrive and also creators, because I think creators, especially those who are independent, like, they're sort of, working on their own, and they're sort of, they are their own leaders. And of course, there's the whole thing about the freelance thing, right? That you have to be your own boss.
Of course.
And you have to become your own leader.
Of course.
So I think that also sort of applies to creators and to leaders who want to sort of, find this balance. And this balance always almost evades them. But I also want to speak about, the creator economy to you. Like, what do you feel about the creator economy? You've been a part of course, major corporates. But even from, even being at the corporate, and of course, corporate is always seen like this big picture thing. But then how do you look at the creator economy, and how would you describe it, let's say?
So I think 5-6 years back, we had our HR colleague joining, and he introduced himself saying, okay, hey, whatever, I do this work and all of that. And I also create content.
Okay.
And then I was like, what do you mean by create content? And then I realized that he was putting up photographs on Facebook and Instagram and whatever. He has a large following. And I was a little bit like, okay, I mean, I also post photographts, right? Like we had no understanding of what content creation is.
Correct, yeah.
And
because anybody can,
right? And cut to now, where people are actually looking at it as a viable, like they're leaving their careers. Or, to do that.
Sure.
So I think we've come a long way in this understanding. The way corporate looks at content creators, like, colleagues who are also doing it on the side, as somebody who's multidimensional and, somebody who's good at expressing and somebody who's not, who's bold enough to kind of share if there's something which helps them. So I feel like creator economy is here to stay. And I think it'll also up the standard, give a lot more options to corporate to work with them. Because otherwise you only have top agencies. And now suddenly you have like so many options.
Got it.
So I think it's here to stay.
That's a very interesting thing what you mentioned about, people in the organization as well, because I'm guessing, isn't that a bit of an iffy situation? Let's say if there's somebody who you can see has the potential to become a proper content creator, like where they want to do this full time, but they also have this corporate job. So how do you, do you advise them? Like if has somebody come up to you and like, hey, you know what, I love this gig, but I think I want to delve into, content creation full time. Where does one draw the line? Because obviously I don't want to go full on with I mean content creation and leaving my job at such major corporates. So do you advise people, how do you directionally, or if people are already in that situation, how can you steer them in the right way?
See, I think there are two kinds of people in corporate jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. There are people who look at it as a career.
Yeah.
And there are people who look at it as a job.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
I think the first thing you need to figure out is, what do you think about your job? What do you think of a career? If they are in a great place in terms of, doing that, sure, they can do it on the side, but obviously it'll take them much longer, as a content creator. So it really depends. And if it's just paying your bills and you don't enjoy your job, and then you obviously find a lot of energy in doing it full time, then I would advise them to do it on the side till the time they feel confident, because content creation is also a journey.
It is, yeah.
You don't know for sure whether you're going to stick to it or not. So I think that cost-benefit analysis is very, very important. And I think if you put around, I think I would encourage people to evaluate, if you put the same amount of energy in your job, what are the benefits you might get
and I think
from there?
No, I think the cost-benefit analysis is something that I really feel more people should feel aware, should be aware of and should check out, because I think simple tool, but then it really helps you gain perspective. And
not everybody's cut out for that. So like my father, he keeps going to a lot of these spiritual retreats and all that. I'm a spiritual person as well. So he tells me, he said, he asked me that there's like, what is that one knowledge? If you get, you don't need any other knowledge.
Okay, that's a very loaded question.
Yes.
Actually.
So take a guess.
What's that one knowledge? The knowledge of self?
Yes.
Oh yeah?
You're right.
Wow. I mean, see, I've also done I've done Vipassana myself.
So
see, my mother's also,
So self-knowledge is so important. So I think people jump ships because they think somebody else is doing that without getting to a point where they have enough self-knowledge about or confidence to handle that. And a lot of creators are very young, so they haven't had that curve yet. But I mean,
that's a great point that you mentioned here. But you've mentioned teams and leaders and whatnot, and the knowledge of self. But once you have teams, once you have multiple people in a team, right, it's very important for these teams to, of course, function efficiently, but also be agile. Right? Like they have to work together very well, and they have to work steer towards the business goals. But here we have these content creators who are almost like ad hoc, again, because agencies are more, let's say, they are more structured, more layers, okay, so this is coming from here, this is happening like this. But what do you think in terms of the team dynamics, right? Oftentimes the team might feel like, oh, why is there a third person coming in and doing this job or helping me, or why is this a freelancer coming through? So how does one really balance that out? Or can there be a playbook in the team itself that telling the team that, what, hey, we might be working with freelancers, so just be comfortable with that. Or, they include them, don't make them feel alienated, but at the same time, you're the team. So how do you do that?
So you're talking about a situation where there is a corporate team, and then there is this gig economy worker who's working with them.
With the team, yes.
And what should the corporate team be aware of?
What should they be aware of? What should they tell the team also? So
I think it works both ways, first of all, right? So I think corporate people are extremely experienced in team dynamics. Because team issues happen all the time, right? Your teams change all the time. So they know that. I think what they sometimes lack is an understanding of how freelancers work. Things like time zones. And there is a very specific, I think this will be very interesting for your audience. Make a schedule and manager schedule. You've heard about that?
I heard on Colin and Sameer, actually, I did.
So most people in the corporate team will be on a manager schedule, which is their day is broken up into an hour.
That's a very cool insight.
And there is a slot. And when you want to have a meeting, because they are on a manager schedule, because 80% of their work is that. It is different. In a team, it's different. Some people are 60-40, some people are 20-80, some people are. But I'm guessing most people working with this person will be on the manager schedule.
Sure.
And this person who's the creative
He's on a maker's
needs to be on a maker schedule to do good
Sure.
work, which is mean you block half a day, you block the whole day. And if that day happens to be the team meeting day, then they've pretty much lost their
That's a
productive
very
day.
interesting. Wow. Okay.
And that understanding on both parties
Yeah.
need to happen. So I think what the clients need to understand is that creatives don't work on a manager's schedule. And what creatives needs to understand is that they don't work on a maker's schedule.
That's some gold, right? There's some really good advice actually for creators and managers. And probably you can tell us in the comments how you think about this entire maker and manager, and where do you fall into this entire bracket, or do you not fall into any of these brackets? So very interesting point. That thank you so much for sharing that, Rashmi. That's really very interesting. But you know, from a creator's perspective, and I'm also again being an independent host creator, it always bothers me, right? Like, how do I work with these brands, right? Like, because here we've assumed that the creator is working, or the freelance person is working with the brand, but how should you pitch to your to the brand that you're working with? You know, how can you position it? Ki, hey, you know what? I'm so and so, but I'd love to work with your company. I can help you with copywriting. I can help you with website design, graphic design. I know you have a team, but I can help them. Like, you know, so how do you do it? Like, do you sort of, I don't know, stalk them on LinkedIn and send a message there? Do you approach them on Twitter? Do you go to their office and send them a bouquet of flowers? Like, how does one pitch a cold pitch, that too?
Yeah. So couple of points here. One is LinkedIn is great for corporates. Okay. So LinkedIn is good.
Yeah.
I don't think stalking people on LinkedIn, like I get like hundreds of messages.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, people trying to sell me their services. And the worst is people just kind of come with a little bit of an entitlement saying, okay, so when is a good time to have a chat with you and explain our offerings?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't have
Yeah,
a need.
yeah.
I don't want to know
Sure.
your offering. And why would I spend an hour with you to understand your offering?
Correct.
So I think one is articulate the benefit you're going to provide.
Sure.
It's not about what you want to tell them.
Sure.
It's about what they want to hear.
Absolutely.
So one is that any mail, like, you know, on LinkedIn or this thing, please articulate what is the benefit for, and you can only do that when you understand the context of corporate, when you can understand what's my KPI. So when you talk to someone, try to put yourself into their shoes and say, what is this person concerned about? Is this person concerned about quality? Is this person concerned about cost? And I can tell you 3-4 things which typically will fall into that thing. And then write to that. That's one. Second thing, try to build a relationship and not just bombard with an offering. That may not be the right time.
Sure.
Right? So I think you do a fantastic job on LinkedIn on just sharing, you know, value. I think if you do that, that's always better.
Sure.
Because a pull is always better than kind of
the push.
You know, the push may not be the right time, may not to be the right person, all of those things.
Sure.
And the third thing I would say is, see, brands are concerned about 4 things. And I'll tell you. One is the cost. So obviously, creators have an advantage, right? The second, they love working with creators, you know, because of diversity. Diversity of thought. So I think definitely full-time creators have a place to stay with the brands. Where they actually are worried about is quality. Even context can be provided, right?
Sure.
Context, if a good brand team can provide. Quality and reliability.
Sure.
I think that's the concern. So if you pitch to them, talk to that concern. And that concern may not be articulated all the time.
Sure. That's again some golden advice right there. Quality, and because again we have all had experiences, right, when you're working with freelancers, where you're working with people, and sometimes the quality isn't just up to it, and that actually might just leave a sour taste in the mouth for corporates, and obviously that might affect their future workings with freelancers. So if you're a freelancer, if you're somebody who's on contract or like who's a contractual worker, if you want to position to newer people, I think that's some great advice, keeping that in mind, keeping the KPIs of the corporates in mind. Rashmi, we've seen this world, right? We've seen this happening a lot. That creators, like, you know, freelancers, independent creators, we've seen this, that burnout becomes a very important issue for them, right? And it's something that they go through. And this can be due to a bunch of reasons, right? Financial instability, timelines aren't being met, or they're just running out of creative juice. how would you suggest them to sort of curtail this burnout? How do you play around with this? Because again, this is such a sensitive topic. This is something that affects almost all creators, I would say, at some degree, at some point in their lives. So how do you prioritize your well-being while at the same time making it sustainable, right? Making it so that, okay, I'm not just going to be in my well-being zone for 2 days and then I'm back to, the craziness. So how do you prioritize your well-being while being a content creator, which is such a high-pressure job?
Yes, absolutely. No, the great question, and I think more people need to talk about this. So I'm glad you asked me that. Let me put like a consulting model on this.
Okay. Sure.
And we sometimes talk about like will and skill. Is it a will issue that they are not wanting to take care of themselves, or like they know what to do but they don't do it, or is it a skill issue, like they don't know how to?
Sure.
Let me address both. A lot of times I do a lot of keynote speaking on well-being and leadership and all of that, and I work with a lot of people. I've seen a lot of corporate employees, freelancers, students, all of that. A lot of time people know that they should, let's say, exercise, they should take break, those kind of things, but they don't do it.
Yeah.
And to those people, I would like to say that for a creator, it's so much more important to rest. I'll tell you why. Let me tell you this story about Picasso, which I love this story because Picasso was, of course, the most influential painter,
creator of that time. Of course,
and he was known for experimentation, innovation. Creator today needs to innovate, experiment. The competition 100%. Is very tough, right? But he always gave an impression of sort of chilling, being at rest, and socializing. And like he was not actively painting or sculpting most of the time.
Okay, interesting.
And when somebody asked him about this, and then he said that rest is important for creation. And it is counterintuitive. But what he said is that when you think I am resting, when you think I am chilling, he did use the chilling word, but just to connect to the audience there, when I'm resting is when I'm actually working. And when he's actually painting is when people think he's working, making a painting or sculpting, he's actually playing.
Interesting.
Because that's play for him. And the play is what comes out of creator.
Sure.
You can't channelize it into an algorithm creativity.
Of course.
So I think for creatives, it's so much important to understand that well-being is not like a good to do for them. It really, really channelizes their inspiration and creativity to produce good work.
Nice.
If you're so busy, you're going to miss the inspiration, which will take your video viral.
Sure.
So I think for creative, it's very important that if you know what to do, do it.
Sure.
So that's the will issue. Okay. Then coming to the skill issue, sometimes people don't know how to.
Yeah.
Start with basics, physical and mental health.
Yeah.
I look at holistic well-being. If people are interested, they can look up 8 pillars of holistic well-being.
Okay.
Where you have like financial well-being, your occupational well-being and all of that. And I would encourage them to look at it and figure out that one thing which is causing them most discomfort.
Sure.
And start pulling there. It'll automatically percolate in all other areas. If you don't have a good relationship at home or with your girlfriend or with your parents, it is going to cause mental health.
Sure.
If you are not physically fit and active, it's going to affect your mental health. If you're mentally fulfilled, your work is fulfilling, it's going to affect your relationships and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So think of it holistically. Don't think of that. And the last thing I would say is just tools, So I gave an example of maker versus manager.
Sure.
Block your calendar, do deep work, have your boundaries, say no. People know this. They don't do it.
Sure.
The other thing maybe it's helpful, which is having somebody like a coach to work through things.
Of course.
So the WhatsApp tool I was talking about, which is
Tell me more about that. Yeah, like tell me more about this tool. Like it seems like fascinating.
It's a digital AI-enabled coach.
Okay.
So imagine you having a personal coach and having that person you can bounce off without judgment, with anonymity, with sort of context and giving you advice. So this tool is what me and my my tech partner have created, which is a leadership tool.
Okay.
Which is basically, it's on your WhatsApp. So you click the link, it immediately comes into your WhatsApp, and it's your friend. It's called Neo. So you can ask Neo. So you're going to pitch a client. You can say, hey, I'm going to pitch a client. I'm a freelancer. How do I pitch? And it'll give you it'll ask you a few questions.
Of course.
Saying, okay, blah, blah, blah. What do you want to pitch? How long is the pitch? Is this a new client? Is this an old client? And then it'll give you like bullet points on quick one. You can be driving and saying, okay, these are good reminders. I need to pitch it like that. Right. So it does that. It takes care of the burnout. So if you say, how do I put more boundaries into my life? It'll give you a few suggestions and it'll ask you context. So that might be helpful. So there are tools like that, so use those tools. If you don't have money for expensive coaching and therapy and all of that, you have tools like this now.
Sure.
So try it out, might help you.
Interesting. So the link for Neo is actually in the description below. So do check it out, and you can use it on WhatsApp and get some interesting solutions right from day one. Very interesting inflection point. Again, AI has entered the workforce, right? And it's everybody's favorite topic. And of course, that's a separate conversation altogether. AI is in the house. It really is. But that really does allow me to segue into my next part, which is the future of creators, right? Because right now, you gave us a very good timeline that 5-6 years ago, you said that, somebody wanted to get into content creation. Somebody was considering themselves a content creator because they were posting photos. Now it's a fairly reasonable, you do have, let's say out of every 10 people, you have 3 to 4 people who are very actively posting. Perhaps 1 or 2 of them are professionally doing this, freelancing or content creation or freelance content creation as it were. But I want to understand from you, since you've had such a vast experience in these big corporate brands, in these legacy brands really, that what is the future of work when it comes to creators, brands? How will these two parties work together? Obviously, there are advantages on both sides, where brands want to work with creators. Creators also obviously want to work with brands along with creating their own audience, but they want to be associated with good brands.
Yeah.
But what do you think is going to be the future of this entire marriage of sorts between these two parties?
I think creator industry is still nascentish. I think the audience needs a little bit more time to mature, and working with brands will help that. There are many brands which are still reluctant to work with freelance creators, because of the things I talked about, quality and reliability.
Sure.
When you work with a freelance, it's a creative output. You don't know if it's good or not.
Sure.
But if you work with a big agency, they already have those filters put in.
Correct.
So that reliability, if I'm a brand manager, I'm like, what? I don't want to do trial and error.
Sure.
So I think it'll help. It'll help with time. I think people are understanding that there is a place for full-time creators. So that's one. Secondly is AI is in the house, and AI is coming for creators.
Okay.
So that's I have seen the way it has taken over some of the things, and definitely it's cheaper, it's free, and so many things like Mid-Journey and tools like that, and anybody can use it. My 11-year-old is a creator. He's a YouTube creator, and he uses Mid-Journey and to create. So I think accessibility is really, really high. Yeah. I think where I think we will still need a real full-time creator is the context and the expertise they build. So I'll give you an example. For my newsletter Leaders Who Thrive, the link, I didn't want to do Substack because I find Substack a little bit boring. So I went to another, and there you have to create like a page and write the copy. Yeah. So I was like, okay, let me see if ChatGPT can help me. And crap, I couldn't use like a single line of it. So I wrote it. I usually write everything myself in any case. So, but I was just curious to know. I don't think we are there yet. And I think a lot of people who have tried these tools, they just spend like 30 minutes on their tool and then do it themselves, right? Sure. Whether it's creating presentations or not. So it's still nascent. But I think creators who will succeed will be people who can tame the AI to help be more productive.
Sure. Yeah.
So the 80% stuff they still do, but the 20% of editing can be probably done by AI and done very well. And I have used it for that as well sometimes,
Interesting.
So I think I would say I'm a learning evangelist, learning catalyst. Upskill yourself on AI and tame it and use it I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to work with people who use AI.
Of course.
Because I'm like, you're going to charge me half the, you charge me double the time if you're going to do it yourself and if you don't know
Sure.
how to use AI tools. So
Exactly.
showcase that.
Absolutely. And but you're also saying that brands are more acceptable towards working with creators now. Now that
I
that's
think
time is
brands love
progressing.
working with creators because of the diversity.
Yeah.
It's just the quality and the, the administrative
Yeah.
hassle, which sometimes is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
So, yeah, the quality, the reliability, there are some agencies which say, till the time you like the product, we will keep revising it.
yeah.
And now if for a freelancer, it's difficult to do
Sure.
that, right? So the industry will mature, but
Yeah.
definitely there is a place for full-time creators and with the brands. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
another very interesting thing that always fascinates me about the creator economy and these creators is that, of course, you can be a freelance resource and you can be an individual contributor, but a lot of these creators also bring their own distribution,
Yes.
right? And of course,
Yes.
major brands don't really need another stream of distribution. Of course, it always helps to have inroads towards, let's say, a younger audience, a younger cohort. But the fact remains that having that additional distribution also helps, right? Once you're working with a brand and a brand wants to work with the creator, they're providing that skill, yes, which is their core skill, which might be around photography or just being on camera. But them having their own distribution can also help brands. So I think that's also a very interesting
It's
cherry on the cake.
absolute. And even established brands. So Coke worked with Zendaya right
Yeah.
now with Smart Water. Okay, so I know one could say that only once you become like really big or
Sure.
celebrity or then the brands will. But what happens is sometimes brands are coming up with new products.
Sure.
And which is a different target audience because brands have to innovate.
Absolutely.
And in those target audience, there could be a creator who has made their foothold.
Yeah.
So absolutely, absolutely. Brands do want to work with creators. They do value that.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good to hear
Yeah.
because I'm sure a lot of creators always think that, oh, what, do brands even think about us, or are we just considered? We're only at the helm of the YouTube algorithm, like we're currently on the platform, or Spotify and whatnot. But having brands, I think it also allows you. It provides that validation to you as well. That brands also want. It's not just.
And creators also will get more professional, right?
Oh,
How to
absolutely.
pitch. What data to talk about.
Yeah. So a bunch of these things will help.
Will mature the
for creators. So I think,
relationship.
of course, Coca-Cola is a very huge one to catch. But even starting out small, you can work brands. You can pitch to brands which might not be that big, but for creators, I think it's essential to take that first step. But Rashmi, do tell me this. Like we've spoken so much about creators. We've spoken about creators you've worked with and people who think they're creators. People you said your own son is a content creator himself. But tell me about your favorite creators, right? And it can go across platforms, across genres. But I want to understand some of your preferences as well in this space. Who do you like consuming? Instagram.
So there's so many. Like I consume so many creators. YouTube, primarily YouTube and Instagram. So the current favorite is actually me and my son's favorite, since you talked about my son as well, which is this handle called Food Farmer.
Right.
Who is this guy who suddenly just changed, how we think about foods and labels and, really caught the attention of brands in maybe not so positive manner, but it did.
Yeah.
And there are two reasons it's my current favorite, right? So me and my son, we really look forward to he'll come from the school. I'm like, what? There's a new Food Farmer. After dinner and all, we'll sit and watch this. So we look forward to that. So that's our time as well. Two things. One is that real value add, right?
Yeah.
Taking something to the masses, which is something so basic.
Sure.
I always read food labels.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked that not many people do that.
Right.
And for somebody to get that insight, for somebody to take it to the masses where kids are now learning how to do it, that is fantastic. So I think real value add. And the second interesting thing at a meta level, I think, is the production of those videos are very simple.
Yeah. Agreed.
And yet it's so popular.
Sure.
So I think that's really to say that if you have substance, style becomes secondary. So don't focus so much on the style.
Interesting.
Focus on the substance. That's the Christmas tree. The bells and whistles, yes, it makes it look great, but you got to have the tree first.
You gotta have the tree first. That's some great advice. Any other last words, Rashmi? We had such a fascinating conversation around creators, around brands. But what would you tell a content creator? And of course, not really if they're teenagers, but if they're actually considering, if they're watching this, perhaps in their 20s, even in their 30s, if they're watching this and they want to step into this world of content creation, working with brands, doing a bit of solo work. So many things to consider, your financials, your creativity. You spoke about Picasso, which was great, about rest. But what would you tell them? What should you prioritize? How should you go about these things? Since you've also done, you've had a bunch of your side projects as well. So what would you just like to leave them with?
I would say take time to experiment with it. And find your unique angle.
Right.
Because otherwise it's very tough, right? So I would say take your time. When you pitch to a brand also, talk about what's unique about you.
Sure.
Many other creators are coming to the brand, talking about the same thing. If it's health and wellness, it's health and wellness. If it's what is that unique thing in you? And it's very hard to pitch that if you don't know that yourself.
Yeah.
So take your time to experiment.
So the knowledge of self. I think
self-knowledge, right? We're coming back
to
to that. So take that time, be patient about it. And second thing I would say, and something which I faced, and that might help a few of your audience who are thinking about it and feeling a little bit on the fence. Like I created content without thinking I'm creating content. Like I used to always write. My TED Talk was actually an article because I am a writer. I was a writer. So I used to write and I made my husband read, my friend read. And oh my God, this is so good. This is so good. I'm like, oh, okay. And that's how the TED Talk happened because... it was I was a very reluctant, I was like, oh, this is an article, and Financial Express wanted to publish that article as well. Right. I said, no, I'll create a talk out of it. And I remember talking to 400 people, feeling very happy about it. It was the flagship event, it was not a university event. It was like a flagship TEDx event of Vietnam. The biggest one, and I was very happy 400, 500 people were in the audience, and then they said that, oh, I'll put it on YouTube, right? I didn't know nothing about how this TED thing works. I said, okay. And I was like, YouTube, it'll be very embarrassing if it's got less than 100 views, I remember thinking, I said, it should get 100 views and then I'll be satisfied. Okay. And then immediately it got 100 views, and I was like, okay, 300, I'll be happy. Yeah. In a day, guess how many views it had?
600.
3,000.
Wow.
And then in 4 days, it had 30,000. Now it has like 160,000. And I still get messages from people saying, oh, I saw your TED Talk and this really resonated with me and all. And that was a sort of an inflection point for me to realize that when you have something to say, you don't know how you're helping people. And that gave me the confidence to speak out, to share your story. So my actual advice would be, you might feel on the fence and you might feel like, okay, should I not? I would say do it. Because you don't know, there are people who need to hear it from you. Yeah.
That's lovely. I mean, that example, I think, just seals the entire conversation, what we've spoken about, that having that knowledge of yourself, and also, like, if you're always on the fence, but your voice
do it. Your voice matters. Your voice matters. Do it.
And I'm sure once you recognize your voice and once you propagate your voice, brands will be soon to follow, and other things will also figure itself out. Exactly. But Rashmi, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming down for this conversation. I'm sure people have learned so much just by listening to you and just by observing you and listening to your thoughts. But where can they reach out to you, actually, if they have to? No, I don't know, for a pitch. I don't know if that would be the best way to reach out for a pitch, as Rashmi mentioned. But just if they want to give you a follow, give you a shout out, how can they do that?
So I'm not very active on Instagram, but there is a handle, Leaders Who Thrive.
Okay.
But I think maybe we'll put the link of the newsletter, because I do write, and that would be helpful. The other thing they could really benefit is the Neo, your digital coach, which they can immediately click and get started and see if that helps them.
Okay, that was it. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's a brand new video series that we've started here on 1000 Faces Club. So do let us know in the comment section below what you thought about this video, what can be better, who should we bring in next to talk about these various things related to the creator economy and how to future-proof yourself as a creator. Please let us know in the comments. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already. My name is Shreevar. And I will see you very soon again for a new video. Bye-bye.